Some animals are so rare, so dangerous, and so misunderstood that most people will never see them in real life. But in 2025, I went out and found them. From a $5 abandoned axolotl to a living, breathing, two-headed snake, this is the wildest pet journey I have ever taken. In the year 2025, I kept some of the most unique pets from every corner of the world. Each one came with its own story, its own danger, and its own mystery. Instead of keeping all these stories as separate videos, I decided to turn everything into one long journey. A single movie, a complete record of what it's really like to care for the animals that most people never should. And it all started with an online listing I almost ignored. Someone was selling an axolotl enclosure for just $5. When I clicked on the photos, my stomach dropped. The water was completely brown. Trash was floating at the surface. And somehow, impossibly, there was still a living axolotl inside. I called the seller and he told me his uncle had given it to him, but he just didn't know how to care for it. $5 felt wrong. It felt like an insult to the life that was barely hanging on inside that tank, so I drove out immediately. When I finally got the tank home, the water was so dirty that even a powerful filter couldn't clear it. I had no other choice but to reach inside blindly and start removing everything piece by piece. The stench was overwhelming. Eventually, buried deep under all the filth, I found it, the axolotl, alive. And not just alive, but seemingly healthy, and shockingly rare. It was a golden albino axolotl, a specific morph that can sell for over $100. Based on breeding research, some of these axolotls also carry a special gene that causes them to glow under UV light. I moved it into a temporary clean tank and got to work completely rebuilding its home. I used real substrate, natural rocks, live plants, and plenty of caves for it to hide in. I installed a safe, gentle filtration system. That night, when the lights went out, I turned on a UV light, and there it was. The axolotl glowed softly in the dark. A creature that had almost disappeared because of pure neglect was now thriving. That one moment set the tone for everything that would follow. Next up, piranhas, red-bellied piranhas, a species often portrayed in movies as mindless, bloodthirsty killers. But in reality, research shows they are actually cautious, social fish that rely on group behavior rather than blind aggression. I built them a massive Amazon-style enclosure filled with tangled roots, fine sand, and dense plant cover to make them feel secure. When I first fed them, they completely ignored insects but went absolutely wild for meat. It was a frenzy. And then came the real test. I put my hand in the tank. They didn't attack. They just watched me. They were curious, alert, but restrained. It was a powerful lesson in separating myth from reality. Then came something even smaller, but just as fascinating, a trapjaw ant colony. Starting with just a single queen, I watched an entire civilization form from nothing. Workers hatched, roles began to emerge. Food was shared throughout the colony. I used a custom-built nest carved from a special brick to give them the perfect space to grow. Watching them hunt live prey was incredible. Their jaws snapped faster than the human eye can even track. According to entomological studies, trapjaw ants can strike at speeds exceeding 60 meters per second. It's one of the fastest movements in the entire animal kingdom. But not every story from this year had a perfect ending. A tiny, almost invisible gap in their enclosure allowed the entire colony to escape. All that remained was the queen, alone again. But she had survived once before, and I had a feeling she would again. From tiny ants, I moved to something far more feared, a velvet ant, often called a cow killer. Despite the name, it's actually a species of wingless wasp, and its sting ranks among the most painful ever recorded on the Schmidt Pain Index. I built it a desert-themed enclosure with rock canyons and dry sandy substrate. Then I decided to do something most people would call insane. I let it crawl on my arm. I had to stay completely still. One mistake, one sudden move could mean unbearable pain. It never stung me, but the tension in that moment was absolutely real. Then came the black widows, venomous, feared, and deeply misunderstood. I created 3 separate, distinct environments for the Maforest setup: a dark cave and an indoor-themed enclosure to see where they would prefer to build their webs. It was an experiment in instinct. One escaped. Another one refused to eat, no matter what I offered. But the third one thrived. It was a stark reminder that nature doesn't follow our scripts, and our sense of control is always just an illusion. Fish came next. A whole collection of bizarre and wonderful species, eyeless cavefish that navigate their dark world using only vibration. Glass catfish so transparent you can literally see food moving through their bodies. A leaffish that hunts by pretending to be a dead, decaying leaf floating in the current. And finally, a mud skipperfish that walks on land. Watching it move between the water and the muddy banks felt like watching evolution pause right in the middle of a step. Then there was the turtle, another rescue found in another abandoned tank. After some research, I identified it as a Central American wood turtle. I built it a beautiful land and water enclosure, complete with a working waterfall. When it came to food, it had very clear preferences. It devoured worms, pellets, and insects, but it completely refused to eat any vegetables. Some instincts are just too hard to change. And finally, the rarest animal of them all, a 2-headed snake, 2 heads, 1 body, 2 separate minds learning how to cooperate. Based on all the documented cases, polycephaly in snakes is extraordinarily rare, and their survival beyond infancy is almost unheard of. Yet here they were, alive, growing. Each head had its own distinct personality. One was cautious and shy, the other was aggressive and bold. I built them a lush rainforest enclosure filled with climbing vines and dense cover for them to feel safe. When they ate, it was a spectacle. Sometimes one head would strike the prey while the other just watched. Sometimes they would compete for the same piece of food, and sometimes they would actually work together. Watching them move was like watching biology negotiate with itself in real time. This journey wasn't just about collecting pets, it was about responsibility. It was about understanding that these animals are not just pieces of content or living decorations. They are complex living systems shaped by millions of years of evolution. Some of them survived because they were rescued from terrible situations. Some thrived because they were finally given the respect and the environment they needed. And some of them reminded me that no matter how much we plan, no matter how much we build, nature always, always has the final word. Thank you for joining me on this incredible journey. If you were as fascinated by these animals as I was, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss what's coming next. Thanks for watching.